Alright, picture this. It's 1858, Bradford, England. The air smells like coal smoke and despair, the rivers are essentially open sewers, and your average life expectancy is, well, let's just say optimistic. But amidst the grim reality of the Industrial Revolution, there's one simple, affordable joy for the working class. Candy. Specifically the humble peppermint lozenge. A little snowy disc of minty sweetness selling for just a penny a pop at a market stall run by a guy named Joseph Neal. It's the ultimate Victorian hack, a cheap, powerful flavor punch to distract you from the fact that your job is crushing your soul. What could possibly go wrong? Spoiler, everything. In October 1858, a simple candy run triggered the Peppermint Massacre. We're talking hundreds of poisonings, dozens of deaths, and a criminal investigation that makes modern corporate scandals look like a squabble in a sandbox. Grab your magnifying glass and maybe put down that snack. I'm the historical detective, and today we are breaking down exactly how a sugary treat became a weapon of mass destruction in the Peppermint Massacre of 1858. Okay, to understand this disaster, you have to understand the logic of the 1850s food scene. And let me tell you, it was wild. If you think modern processing is scary, the Victorians were on a whole different level of hold my beer. In 1858, pure sugar was expensive. To make candy affordable, makers used a filler called Daff. What is Daff? Oh, just an adorable nickname for mostly plaster of Paris and chalk. It was perfectly legal to sell candy that was 50% drywall. Think about that next time you complain about high fructose corn syrup, at least your Skittles aren't made of literal ceiling tiles. So, you've got a system built on legalized fakery. Now let's add the element that converts a sneaky business practice into a fatal mistake. The ultimate Victorian mix-up. A pharmacist named William Hodgson needed a fresh supply of Daff. He sent his assistant to a local druggist's warehouse. Now, in this warehouse sat two identical sacks of white powder. One was Daff, the other, arsenic. No labels, no safety seals. Just 2 bags of mystery white powder sitting side by side like a game of Russian roulette for your sweet tooth. This is the equivalent of keeping your vanilla extract and your drain cleaner in identical, unlabeled juice boxes. What could possibly go wrong? The assistant pointed at a bag, paid his pence, and hauled 12 pounds of pure, unadulterated rat poison back to the candy maker. Okay, so a lethal poison has entered the supply chain. Now let's meet the candy maker, the Willy Wonka of this specific sugary nightmare. When that sack arrived at the candy maker's workshop, a guy named James Appleton, it was standard procedure to just, mix it in. They didn't have a modern qualitative analysis lab to verify it was Daff. It's white, it's powder, it's cheap, let's make some lozenges. Here's the terrifying math. Each lozenge ended up being about 12% pure arsenic. One single penny mint contained enough poison to kill 3 grown men. It wasn't just candy anymore, it was a sugary claymore mine. The death mints hit the green air market on a busy Saturday night. People were looking for a treat after a long week in the mills. Joseph Neal, the stall owner, sold 5 pounds of them in hours. By midnight, the massacre began. Now, arsenic is a stealth killer. It mimics cholera, cramping, vomiting, ghostly blue skin. Doctors originally brushed it off as just another outbreak. But then the numbers started getting weird. It wasn't just one family or one street. It was anyone who had visited the green air market. And here's the kicker. Even the candy maker, James Appleton, and the stall owner, Joseph Neal, got sick. They had sampled the merchandise. When the guy selling the candy is currently curled in a fetal position behind his stall, you know the Daff hit different. The hero of the story is Felix Remington, a local chemist with a nose for BS. While doctors were scratching their heads, Remington ran a Marsh test on a handful of Neal's mints. He dissolved the candy in acid, and the test produced a silvery black mirror on a piece of glass. That mirror didn't just reflect Remington's face, it reflected the truth. It was arsenic, enough to wipe out half the city. The police realization was horrifying. There were still several pounds of death mints and candy bowls all over Bradford. Imagine the first ever Amber Alert, but with no phones, just cops sprinting through cobblestone streets screaming, "Stop eating the mints." This was the first time in history a product recall happened in real time under the threat of mass death. The police managed to track down the remaining 4 pounds of candy, but the damage was already catastrophic. By the time the sun came up on Monday, 21 people were dead and over 200 were severely poisoned. And remember, these weren't just upset stomachs. We're talking about permanent organ damage, neurological issues, and a level of trauma that made the entire city of Bradford collectively swear off sweets for a generation. It was a literal massacre, served in a paper bag. The toxic trio, the seller, the maker, and the pharmacist, were hauled into court. The public wanted blood. But remember, this is 1858, the defense's argument? Hey, we were just trying to lie about the ingredients to save money. We didn't mean to kill them, we just meant to scam them. And remarkably, it worked. The charges were eventually dropped because the prosecution couldn't prove criminal intent. They proved gross negligence, sure, but in the 1850s, negligence was basically the national sport of England. The guys who made the massacre mints walked free. But don't turn off the video yet, because while the criminals escaped, the law was about to get a massive, much-needed makeover. If there's a silver lining to 21 people dying from a peppermint, it's this. The British Parliament finally stopped drinking tea and started writing laws. The Bradford Massacre was so high profile and so undeniably stupid that it led directly to the Pharmacy Act of 1868. This act finally mandated that only qualified people could sell drugs, and wait for it, that poisons had to be labeled. I know, groundbreaking, right? It also paved the way for the Sale of Food and Drugs Act, which basically said, hey, maybe don't put plaster of Paris in the candy. It was the birth of modern food safety. We literally have FDA labels today because 200 Victorians had the worst Saturday night in history. So we have labels and we have safety. But the story of the Peppermint Massacre has one final weirdly specific legacy that still affects your grocery store trips today. We like to think we're so much smarter than the Victorians. We have apps, we have lasers, we have organic kale, but the Peppermint Massacre left a DNA strand in our legal system that is still fighting for its life today. Here's the insight that'll make you squint at your next snack. We didn't actually stop using Daff. We just gave it fancy chemical names. Back in 1858, they used plaster of Paris to save money on sugar. In 2026, we use cellulose, which is literally wood pulp, in shredded cheese to keep it from sticking, or titanium dioxide to make your coffee creamer look white instead of grayish sad. The difference? Testing. The Bradford tragedy taught us that white powder A and white powder B are not interchangeable just because they look the same under a gaslight. Every time you see a GRAS, generally recognized as safe stamp from the FDA, you are seeing a shield that was forged in the furnace of the 1858 massacre. We moved from common practice to clinical verification because 21 people paid the ultimate price for a penny's worth of mint. So we have the laws and we have the labels. But there's one final chilling question that remains from that October night in Bradford. Why did it take this specific tragedy to change the world? Before the Peppermint Massacre, thousands of people died every year from adulterated bread, mixed with alum, milk, mixed with formaldehyde, and beer, mixed with strychnine. It was a slow-motion genocide of the poor. But those were slow deaths. They looked like malnutrition or natural causes. The Peppermint Massacre was different. It was fast, it was violent, and most importantly, it targeted everyone, from the factory worker to the shopkeeper's child. It was the first viral food scandal. It proved that in an unregulated market, nobody is safe, not even the guy holding the money. History isn't just a list of dates, it's a list of mistakes we promised never to make again. The next time you see a safety seal that's annoying to peel off, or a list of ingredients that looks like a Latin spellbook, don't complain. That annoyance is the only thing standing between you and a 19th century pharmacist with a very messy warehouse. The Peppermint Massacre of 1858 wasn't just a freak accident, it was a wake-up call that cost a city its soul. If you're a fan of not accidentally eating rat poison for dessert, hit that like button and subscribe to The Historical Detective. We're digging through the grimiest corners of history to find out exactly what's on your plate and why it's, hopefully, not trying to kill you. I've put a poll in the community tab. Which Victorian food hack do you think was the most disgusting? The chalk bread or the formaldehyde milk? Go vote, and I'll see you in the next investigation. And seriously, maybe just stick to fruit for a while.